The room froze when his parents handed me a contract, declaring my assets now belonged to the family. My husband smirked, "Just a formality, babe." I leaned back, smiling. "Then you'll love what's in my safe deposit box." Their faces twisted in panic as my lawyer walked in. The snow had just begun to fall outside the sprawling Vermont estate when they handed me the envelope. We were seated at the long mahogany dining table, its glossy surface reflecting the flickering light of a grand chandelier. Everything about the room screamed generational wealth, the curated oil paintings, the crystal decanter set, even the silence that followed as James's parents, Gregory and Marianne Sinclair, slid the thick papers across the table to me. I was no stranger to silence. In my line of work, negotiating high-stakes mergers in Manhattan, it was often louder than words. But this silence? It carried a weight. A rehearsed calculation. Gregory adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses, his voice calm and crisp. "Lena, we've been discussing the future of our family holdings. What's best for all of us?" Marianne, her pearls catching the light, offered a soft smile. "You've done quite well for yourself, dear. And now that you're part of the Sinclair name, it's only fitting we streamline our assets into one family trust. One cohesive unit." My fingers brushed the edge of the document. The weight of it felt heavier than its pages. "A trust?" James leaned in beside me, his voice syrupy. "It's just a formality, babe. No big deal." He looked so at ease, like he expected me to sign without blinking. Like I was a pawn in a polished game I hadn't realized I'd been playing. I opened the first page. And felt my heart tighten. They wanted everything, my investment accounts, my shares in the firm, the condo I'd bought at 28, even the small art collection I'd been curating for years. It would all go into the Sinclair Family Financial Trust. Which, naturally, Gregory managed. There was no mention of co-ownership, no safeguards, no clauses to protect me. Just signatures. Mine. My mind spun, remembering the odd comments Marianne had dropped over the past few months. "You're so lucky to be part of a legacy like ours," or "with the market so volatile, stability must be such a relief for you." I had always brushed them off, but now, every word felt razor-sharp. And James, God, James. I had loved him with the kind of fierce devotion that made me ignore the red flags. The way he deferred questions about money. The mysterious delays in combining finances after the wedding. The fact that he always seemed just a little too interested in the numbers I casually mentioned. He was watching me now. Not with love. With expectancy. Like a fisherman watching his line tighten. "You trust me, don't you?" he asked, his voice low, sweetened with the kind of artificial charm I had once mistaken for sincerity. But something cracked inside me. I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands calmly on the table, and offered a slow smile. "Then you're going to love what's in my safe deposit box." James's smile faltered. Gregory's brows creased. Marianne's manicured fingers tightened around her wine glass. The silence this time? Different. Uncertain. On edge. "What's in the box?" James asked, his voice barely concealing his unease. "Oh," I said lightly, "just a little paperwork. Some arrangements I made before the wedding. You know me, always cautious." And as if summoned by fate, there was a knock at the door. "Ma'am," came the butler's voice, "your attorney has arrived." Marianne's glass clinked as she set it down, too fast. Gregory's jaw locked. James's hand, which had rested so casually on mine earlier, now hovered in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Into the room walked Clara Dorsey, my lawyer, my friend, and the fiercest legal mind I knew. Her heels clicked against the hardwood as she placed her briefcase on the table with theatrical grace. "Good evening," she said, cool and composed. "I believe there's a contract we're reviewing tonight?" Gregory stiffened. "This is a private family discussion." Clara didn't blink. "And my client is family. Let's take a look, shall we?" She opened the contract, flipped through a few pages, and then gave a soft chuckle. "Wow," she said, raising an eyebrow. "This is impressively aggressive." You're essentially asking Lena to forfeit all financial autonomy. You control everything: withdrawals, property sales, investment decisions. She'd need your written approval to access her own money. James's jaw clenched. It's about unity. Trust. Clara looked at me. Good thing you never signed anything. I stood slowly, my heart pounding, not from fear, but from clarity. This wasn't about family, I said, my voice steady. This was a calculated power grab dressed in linen napkins and fine wine. James stood too, reaching for my arm. Don't do this. I pulled away. I already did. His eyes darkened. You'll regret this. No, I whispered, you will. The room was no longer silent. It breathed in uneven gasps. Marianne's pearl bracelet clinked nervously as she crossed and uncrossed her arms. Gregory tapped a slow, deliberate rhythm on the wood table, like he could drum away the storm Clara had brought in. James, he stood beside me, too close, trying to look composed. But I saw it, the tension in his shoulders, the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth. Clara flipped another page. Clause 12, she said coolly, states that Lena would relinquish all legal rights to her current and future assets in perpetuity. With no clause for divorce, no repayment conditions, no right to withdraw without unanimous family approval. Her voice was calm. Precise. Devastating. Gregory cleared his throat, face reddening. Now hold on, this isn't some kind of robbery. No. Clara didn't even glance at him. Because it certainly reads like one. Lena would be bound to this trust without oversight, without recourse, and without control. You don't see a problem with that? Marianne leaned forward, her voice syrupy, almost motherly. We only meant to protect her. This world is volatile. Look at the market crashes, the fraud cases. We're offering security. I met her eyes. No, Marianne. You're offering a gilded cage. James finally spoke, voice low and defensive. This is ridiculous. You're making it sound like we're villains. This was about unity, about building a future together. I turned to him, something sharp and weary blooming in my chest. A future where I give, and you take? You knew exactly what you were doing, James. You waited until you had the ring on my finger, until I trusted you enough to let my guard down. And then you invited me to a dinner party where your family would try to strip me bare under the pretense of legacy and tradition. His jaw clenched. You're twisting everything. I laughed bitterly. No, I'm finally seeing things clearly. He reached out again, habit or desperation, I couldn't tell, but I stepped back. I trusted you, I whispered. I loved you. That last word tasted like rust. Clara closed the contract gently and folded her hands. Gregory. Marianne. James. I suggest you retract this offer, permanently. Because any further attempt to coerce my client will result in legal consequences. Gregory rose slowly. We can talk this out. No, I said. We're done talking. James's composure cracked. Why are you doing this? His voice was rising now, panic rippling beneath the surface. Why? I echoed, anger surfacing like heat through my spine. Because for months I questioned myself. I ignored the red flags. I told myself I was lucky to be welcomed into your family. But this, I picked up the contract and held it out like poison. This is what welcome looks like to you. Marianne flinched like I'd slapped her. And maybe I had, in the only language they understood, power. James looked stunned, almost childlike in his confusion. So what? You're just going to walk away? No, I walked toward the fireplace, heart pounding. I'm going to expose every single lie, every manipulation, every smile that masked a knife. He stepped in front of me, voice dropping low. You're making a mistake, Lena. You don't know who you're dealing with. Neither do you, I replied, voice like stone. Because I am not your prey. I'm the reckoning. Behind me, Clara stood with quiet pride, a lioness cloaked in law. She placed a single manila envelope on the table. "These are copies," she said, "of Lena's prenup, her financial records, and an affidavit outlining her suspicions. They're time-stamped. Dated. Legally sealed." Gregory scoffed. "You prepared all this? For what? You think the law will take your side over ours?" "Not think," Clara said. "No." I felt it then, that shift in the air when predators realize they've become the hunted. Marianne's shoulders sagged. Gregory went silent. "And James?" He looked at me with something like fear. Not because I had power, but because I had woken up. I thought the contract was the end of the betrayal. Turns out, it was only the beginning. After that dinner, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced, not with anger, but calculation. I kept thinking of James's face when the lawyer walked in. Not shocked. Not even sorry. Just annoyed. Like a thief interrupted mid-theft. The next morning, I called Clara. "I need a private investigator," I said. "No more blind spots." Clara didn't hesitate. "Already lined up." "You want everything?" "Everything," I said. "Finances. Business records. His past. His secrets. And God, there were so many." Within a week, the investigator delivered the first blow. James had debt, massive debt. Credit cards maxed out. Private loans defaulted. Even a failed startup buried beneath fake LLCs. But the worst part? He'd taken out a loan under my name. He had forged my signature. He hadn't just manipulated me. He had stolen from me. I stared at the documents, bile rising in my throat. There it was, in black and white, my name, my social security number, my forged consent. I had spent my life building financial independence, climbing up floors built by my own hands. And he had tried to reduce me to a lifeline. Clara watched my face carefully. "That's criminal fraud, Lena." I nodded, silent. Then she slid another file toward me. "And this is personal." Inside were 2 photographs. 2 women. One brunette, elegant. The other, blonde and luminous, no older than 28. Lisa and Hannah. James had dated Lisa 2 years ago, convinced her to invest in a fake business, drained her savings, then disappeared. Hannah? She was current. As in, currently engaged to him. I stared at Hannah's photo, numb. Clara's voice was steady. "She thinks they're getting married in 6 weeks. She doesn't know about you." I swallowed, hard. "Set up a meeting." Hannah arrived with the energy of someone in love. She had that glow, naive, hopeful. She wore the same kind of ring James gave me. It sparkled with promises she didn't know were lies. When I said his name, her expression shattered. "How do you know James?" she asked, eyes narrowing. I placed my wedding ring on the table. Her breath caught. Then, slowly, she pulled her hand from her coat pocket and placed her ring beside mine. Identical. She began to cry. Between gasps, she told me everything. James had promised her a life abroad. Told her about an inheritance that required marriage. Said he needed her help to secure the estate. She already handed over her savings. She wasn't just heartbroken. She was broken open. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. I reached out, steady. "We burn him to the ground." We didn't confront him. Not yet. Hannah kept the charade alive, texts, phone calls, sweet little nothings. I fed her lines and Clara tracked every financial move. Meanwhile, our investigator uncovered more offshore accounts. Fake consulting jobs. Hidden withdrawals. Then came the bombshell, the Rhode Island estate his family talked about. Still in probate. Not yet theirs. But here's the twist, they needed a married heir to claim control once probate cleared. That's why James married me. I was the legal requirement. But now that I was resisting, he had lined up a replacement, Hannah. He wasn't just trying to rob me. He was trying to erase me. The night of the Sinclair family dinner, Hannah and I walked in together. Marianne nearly dropped her wine glass. "What is she doing here?" she snapped. I smiled sweetly. I never miss family night. Then James walked in behind us, and froze. He saw both of us. Saw the rings. And knew. He tried to recover, but Hannah beat him to it. "Why is your wife at my engagement dinner?" Her voice was sharp, louder than I expected. But strong. He opened his mouth. No words came. Marianne rose, furious. "This is ridiculous." "Not yet," I said. Then Clara stepped forward, folder in hand. "Shall we begin with fraud?" she said coolly, flipping open the file, "and end with bigamy? The camera of the audience's mind captures it, the Sinclair dynasty, caught in their own net. James, pale. Marianne, shrieking. Gregory, silent in shame. Hannah, breathing heavily, fists clenched. And Lena? She stands tall. Her voice doesn't shake. Her eyes don't blink. She is not the betrayed anymore. She is the storm they thought they could control. The dining room was a masterpiece, Gothic chandeliers, candelabras glowing with false warmth, and portraits of Sinclair ancestors watching from the walls, as if judging what they were about to witness. I stood at the threshold, dressed in black silk. Not mourning. Not hiding. Just ready. Hannah walked beside me, her chin lifted like someone who'd learned how to breathe fire. She was no longer the naive girl with shaking hands. Tonight, she was my mirror. James hadn't seen us yet. He walked in with his usual swagger, expecting to introduce his fiancée to his aristocratic parents. But when he looked up and saw me, standing next to her, his entire body stilled. His smile shattered mid-rise. He didn't even speak. Just blinked, twice, like he'd stepped into a nightmare he couldn't wake from. Marianne rose from her seat, her hand clutching the edge of the table like she might faint. "What is the meaning of this?" she snapped, her voice trembling but still grasping at control. I tilted my head. "You said tonight was about family." Gregory stood slowly, his voice heavy with warning. "This isn't the time, Lena." "Oh, I think it's the perfect time," I replied, stepping forward. And that's when Clara appeared from the side hallway, her briefcase in hand, her expression unreadable. The sound of her heels echoed through the room like a judge's gavel. "Shall we begin?" she said simply. Clara placed the first folder on the table. "Let's talk about the business loan taken out under Lena's name. No consent. Forged signature. That's a felony. Flip." James flinched. Marianne's face went bloodless. "Then there's the fraud against Hannah Clark." Flip. She wired funds to Mr. Sinclair under false pretenses, an engagement built on lies, with documentation of promises regarding a shared future, a fabricated estate, and an inheritance that doesn't even belong to him yet. Hannah slammed her engagement ring onto the table. "You told me we were building a life together." James tried to speak, but Clara held up a finger. "We're not finished." She reached into her bag again. "And finally, bigamy." The word dropped like a bomb. "You are currently married to Lena Morgan, and simultaneously engaged to another woman. Under state law, that is a prosecutable offense." The room exploded. Marianne gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "This is absurd." "It's documented," Clara said coldly. "Signed. Dated. Timestamped." Gregory's voice thundered across the room. "Sit down, James." But James didn't move. His eyes were on me, burning. "You think you've won," he muttered, voice shaking with rage. "No," I said softly. "I think I've exposed the truth." James's entire persona cracked in front of everyone. His smirk was gone. His jaw tightened. The chill behind his eyes, once hidden by charm, was now fully exposed. "You always wanted control," he hissed, voice low. "That's what this was. You couldn't handle not holding all the power." I laughed, quietly. Funny. That's exactly what you tried to take from me. You locked me out, he accused. You made me come to you for everything. I protected what I built, I said. From people like you. He slammed his fist on the table, rattling the glasses. I was your husband. You were supposed to stand by me. You were supposed to love me, I whispered. And just like that, the fire in me turned cold. Clara cleared her throat. Since emotions are running high, let me cut to the chase. She turned to Gregory. Your family estate in Rhode Island, it's not legally yours yet. Probate court documents confirm the assets are frozen due to outstanding debts. Gregory paled. Marianne whispered, that can't be true. Clara raised a brow. You tried to funnel Lena's money into the trust not for legacy, but survival. I stepped forward. You didn't want me as a daughter-in-law, I said. You wanted me as a deposit. Marianne screamed at James, you had one job, one. And now you've destroyed us. James turned on her, bitter. This was your plan. I just executed it. Their screams overlapped. Their family fell apart, not in court, but in front of each other. And I stood in the eye of their storm, untouched. Hannah, tears in her eyes but standing tall, looked at me. I want him arrested. I met her gaze, steady. It's already in motion. And then, like a curtain call, the distant sound of police sirens echoed through the Vermont hills. James's head snapped toward the window. He knew. He was finished. The sirens rose like a hymn through the hills, growing louder, closer, an aria of justice, carried on wind and snow. James stood frozen, eyes darting from the window to me, then to Clara, then back again, like a cornered animal realizing there's no door left to flee through. You wouldn't, he hissed. Lena, come on, this is still between us. You can't do this. I already did, I said softly. The red and blue lights flashed against the stained glass windows. The great Sinclair estate, once a symbol of power, prestige, and permanence, now looked like a haunted cathedral on the verge of collapse. Marianne gasped when the front doors burst open. Gregory stumbled backward. Hannah stood tall beside me, chin-high, ringless. Clara stepped to the side as two officers entered, their steps heavy on the marble floor. James Sinclair, one of them said. James didn't answer. Mr. Sinclair, you are under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and bigamy. You have the right to remain silent. No, he snapped, eyes wild. No, this isn't happening. He lunged toward me, but the officers restrained him with practiced ease. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. I just watched. His face, contorted in rage, in betrayal, in disbelief, twisted into something I barely recognized. Gone was the polished air, the charming husband. All that remained was a con man, dragged into the cold night in iron cuffs. As the front doors shut behind them, silence fell. A different kind of silence. Not the silence of power. The silence of ruin. Marianne sank into her chair. Her eyes were hollow, mascara smudged down her cheeks. This can't be happening, she whispered. We were so close. To what? I asked, voice even. To stealing my life? Or the inheritance? Gregory didn't respond. His hands trembled as he poured himself a drink with shaking fingers. He looked older, smaller, like the weight of their schemes had crushed something vital inside him. You were never a daughter, Marianne said bitterly, eyes on me. You were an obstacle. And you, I said, stepping closer, were a lesson. One I won't forget. Hannah and I sat side by side in Clara's conference room, two women once caught in a net now holding the scissors. She twirled her coffee cup absent-mindedly. It still feels unreal, she said. The way he looked at me, like he actually loved me. I sighed, offering her a sad smile. I used to think the same thing. I used to believe the lies were just mistakes. Missteps. But men like James, they don't love. They calculate. She nodded slowly. But we stopped him. We burned him, I corrected. Clara entered with a folder in hand, her tone clipped but triumphant. Update, she said, sliding the documents across the table. Daniel, sorry, James, has been denied bail. The DA's office is pursuing full prosecution. And as for the Sinclair estate? I raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. Foreclosure? Immediate, Clara confirmed. The probate court launched an emergency audit. Turns out, Gregory and Marianne were hiding more debt than assets. Offshore holdings frozen. Accounts drained. The trust they tried to force you into? Illegal. And now, extinct. Hannah let out a breath she'd been holding for weeks. Poetic. No, I said. Perfect. Some people say revenge doesn't solve anything. That it leaves you cold, empty. That it turns you into them. But I disagree. Because revenge isn't about destruction. It's about restoration. It's standing in the ashes of what someone tried to bury you under, and realizing you're still standing. Stronger. Smarter. Sharper. And they're gone. I returned to the condo I had almost lost to that contract. Every corner now felt different, like it had survived a fire and come out shining. The silence here was mine. My breath. My space. I bought myself lilies that day. Placed them in the vase James once mocked as too modern. I left them there, bright, unapologetic. Hannah and I stayed in touch. Sometimes, healing comes not from solitude, but from solidarity. She opened a small art studio in Brooklyn, funded in part by a legal settlement she won. We celebrated its opening with champagne and defiant laughter. One night, we stood on the rooftop of her gallery, watching the city lights hum below. Do you think they'll ever recover? She asked, referring to the Sinclairs. I hope not, I said honestly. But even if they do, they'll never forget who stopped them. Months later, I received a letter. It was handwritten, formal. A final echo of the world I left behind. Lena. I suppose you're satisfied now. You destroyed everything. But don't think this makes you better than us. You just played the game better. I folded it once. Then again. Then dropped it into the flames. Because she was wrong. I didn't play their game. I rewrote the rules.